This chart represents the amount of money spent on lobbying government officials for the period from 2000 to 2012, and also it represents the number of lobbyists over this time period. I think this chart is important for a few reasons. First, it represents the importance of lobbying for corporations and public relations more generally. I mean, the figures here are pretty astounding that the total amount spent on lobbying ranged from something like $1.5 billion to over $3 billion spent on lobbying during this period from 2000 to 2012. And the number of full-time lobbyists is quite extensive. The number ranges from roughly 11,000 to almost 15,000 lobbyists that have been lobbying on behalf of their clients for particular government policies. So we see the importance of lobbying within public relations. However, I guess I also wanted to call attention to this figure for a broader discussion about the role of lobbying in our political system and our democracy more generally. I mean, take a look at these figures. $1, $2, $3 billion spent on lobbying each year. That raises questions, I think, for us about what parties within our society have the financial resources to engage in this lobbying in the first place. And, I think it's clear that in order to be an effective lobbyist in Washington, D.C., that it requires deep financial pockets. And I think it tells us that only certain parties in our society have the resources to engage in this kind of lobbying, that wealthy interests, corporate interests play a dominant role in this kind of lobbying. And obviously, these organizations and corporations would not spend this kind of money if it wasn't effective, if they weren't able to get results in terms of persuading government officials to be more receptive to their requests for deregulation or lower corporate taxes and so forth. But I guess for us, it raises questions about not only who is able to afford the costs for this lobbying, but who isn't. I mean, when we think about our democratic society, which groups or sectors of society are kind of left out here? I mean, when we think about the interests of lower income groups or the disadvantaged or homeless or impoverished, I mean, obviously they are not those groups and groups that represent their interests, that they don't have this kind of financial resources to lobby government officials. So I guess it raises questions about whether or not our system of government and our political process is really skewed towards the interests of the wealthy, the affluent, corporations with deep pockets, whether or not they get more of a say in Washington than other sectors of society. And does that mean that the interests of groups that do not have these kind of financial resources, are their interests given less attention in Washington and by government officials because they are not able to afford this kind of lobbying? So, I mean, again, this figure really demonstrates the importance of lobbying in public relations and corporate America, but it also raises questions about the nature of our democratic society, our political system, our system of government, and whether or not all voices are heard. Public relations firms have increasingly incorporated the internet and digital media into their work on behalf of their clients. One tool that is really useful for public relations is the website for a company or an organization. A company can very easily report on the activities of the company and update the website with news and information, and use the website as a way to try to persuade its intended audiences. Companies are also increasingly using social media like Facebook as a way to communicate with the public and particular audiences, and it's able to make use of Facebook to provide updates about current events and things that it wants audiences and the public to be aware of. It can also respond to concerns from the public via Facebook. Now, that said, while the internet is increasingly very central to public relation activities, these firms have engaged in some ethically questionable activities. For instance, there have been many instances where public relations firms have gone into Wikipedia and tried to airbrush the entries for its clients and delete negative, derogatory information about the client, and really focus more on positive aspects of the company's activities. Also, public relations firms have engaged in the practice of paying bloggers to promote particular products, and some question the ethics of that because people that read those blogs are not aware that the bloggers have received compensation to promote those products. And I think there's lately been a lot of news coverage of a number of celebrities that tweet about a particular product or service. Some celebrities will say very complimentary things about a particular airline or fashion designer or car, when it later comes out that the celebrity was compensated for making those kinds of positive statements about a company. Again, audiences and people that read those tweets are not really aware that the celebrity has been compensated. So people might come to believe that the celebrity just honestly likes this or that product or service, when in fact there's a financial stake involved. So questions arise about whether or not celebrities and bloggers should be really upfront about the compensation that they've received to support a particular product or service. One of the major responsibilities of public relations firms is to manage information and communication for a client during a crisis that has the potential to reflect very badly on the client or the organization. In these instances, when a crisis emerges, the public relations firm manages the flow of information and presents information to news media outlets on behalf of the client. And the goal is to try and minimize negative information and present a situation in the most positive light possible. Now, your book gives some examples of how public relations firms and corporations have handled various crises. A couple of bad examples of how a corporation should not handle a crisis was the Exxon Valdez oil spill in 1989 and the more recent oil spill by BP in 2010. A good example of crisis management was the Tylenol scare in 1982 when a crazy person replaced some pills in Tylenol bottles with poison that ultimately killed a number of people. Now, I guess one thing I would add in these examples is that the relative effectiveness of the company in handling these crises was not just a matter of communication or impression management, that in part BP and Exxon were criticized not simply because they had a bad public relations campaign, but they were criticized, I think, because there was legitimate public outrage for their attempts to avoid responsibility for their actions and their slow response in terms of addressing the problem. And that in the case of Tylenol, Tylenol was really praised for its handling of these tainted products, not just because of its management of information or the press, but because it took substantive action, right? That it put policies in place to prevent these kinds of occurrences from happening in the future. So yes, I guess I would say that public relations plays a role here in these crises and how the public responds to the company. But I think what's most important is what actions the upper level corporate management takes in terms of how they respond substantively in these cases, not just their attempts at impression management. And in these instances, Tylenol really did make substantive changes that took care of the situation where Exxon and BP really lacked that kind of concrete action